So in the spirit of New Year's resolutions, in the spirit of trying to make 2023 the best year yet, how can we get off on the right foot in 2023 with PI planning? Welcome to the last Lean Agile Strategies and Tactics podcast. Lean Agile Strategies and Tactics for your personal, professional, and corporate growth in today's constantly changing and challenging business environments. It is the new year. Happy New Year. In the new year, we always think about New Year's resolutions in the context of improving ourselves. We want to lose weight, go on a diet, exercise, whatever. But in the context of business, corporations can adopt New Year's resolutions. They can set their new direction for the year. And in fact, with our new fiscal Q1, going to Q1, we'll set our new budgets and our new goals for the year. So in the spirit of New Year's resolutions, in the spirit of trying to make 2023 the best year yet, how can we get off on the right foot in 2023 with PI planning?
Great question. So the first thing that I've seen with New Year's resolutions is they're often mistargeted because they're targeted at the activity to do, not the outcome to achieve. As we were talking earlier, you talked about, I want to lose weight or I want to become more fit. But why? That's a thing to do. What's the outcome? Is it you want to be able to run a marathon and have that as an achievement? Is it you want to look better on the beach? Is it, improve your health scores, something like that? That's where a lot of companies fall short too, is they talk about, we're going to implement SAFe. We're going to get better at PI planning. We're going to do better budgeting. To what end? What are you trying to achieve? And what I've found is so critical to have that end goal that you're trying to achieve. Well, there's two things. One, very often the road is pretty tough. These are tough choices. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So you need that motivation when you start to run into those impediments, those roadblocks, those things that, oh man, how do we get around this? If we don't have a clear goal that is really enticing, engaging, exciting, it's really easy to say, no, it's not that big a deal. I don't really need to get all that fit. Round is a shape, right? And companies lose sight of that you have to have that clear goal we're trying to achieve. Now, the other thing is when we have a goal, maybe it's we want to improve our health scores and we start out with a fitness program, okay? But as we go through the fitness program where we're getting in better shape and our energy is going up, all those things, but our health scores aren't improving, we need to pivot. We need to adjust. We need to change direction. Maybe it's nutrition. Maybe it's sleeping patterns. Maybe it's a combination. So when you set the resolution as a thing to do, that's when you struggle. When you set the resolution as a goal to achieve, that's the critical nature.
So the way you describe that makes me think about sort of how we write stories and epics in a safe context. So if we're setting that sort of business outcome or vision or goal from that higher strategic level, how does the starting off on the right foot, what is it about PI planning specifically that translates into that first good step followed by the next and the next and the next? What is it about the PI planning process that sets us up for success going into 2023?
Yeah, so let me target my previous answer on PI planning. Why do we do PI planning? Well, we're trying to improve flow of value to the customers. That's the bottom line. There's a lot of tangible and sometimes intangible improvements we see as well. We become more efficient, maybe more cost effective. But the real thing we're trying to do is improve flow of value to the customer. You're going to end up with happier customers, faster feedback loops, so you get the right solutions to the customers, and you're inherently going to improve productivity, even though that's not what you're focusing on. So if that's the outcome, to improve flow of value to the customers, now we look at PI planning and say, okay, It's a 2-day calendar day, 16-hour event that we do approximately every quarter, usually about every 10 weeks. And our goal is to set our direction for the next 10 weeks. Well, if we don't have a clear objective, what we're trying to accomplish, clear goal, we're just going to be doing work. That's all it is just doing work. And that's where a lot of companies struggle is they focus way too much on the work to do, and they see teams in planning and they start to say, okay, the most effective way to plan work to do is to get everybody the work, have them figure out how they can fit it in, figure out how it aligns, and then report back what that looks like. That's not PI planning. PI planning is about discovering what work we have to do, and even more importantly, discovering what work we don't have to do. Trying to eliminate things. Principle number 10 of the Agile Manifesto, simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. That's a core lean principle, is eliminating waste and doing less work. So in PI planning, if we can come in with a very clear goal direction, what is it we're trying to accomplish? And where I see companies making a lot of mistakes is they start to talk about the work way too early and they lose sight of the goal. They say, we're going to exercise daily. That's work to do. That's not an outcome. So one of the resolutions I recommend companies look at is get much better and focus on what is it we're trying to solve? What are we trying to accomplish? And why? What's the why behind it? So your next PI planning event, the way you improve it is not all the detailed process oriented types of things. It's starting at the higher level, garbage in, garbage out. Starting at the high level, do we have a clear direction, vision, and outcomes we're hoping to achieve? And let's let the teams figure out how we get there. If we tell them, we want you to build a house that is this tall, that is this, now we're describing work. If we tell them we want to have a great place to live that includes these things and so on, now they're the master carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and so on, not us. Let's let them figure out the work that needs to be done to achieve that outcome. That's the biggest resolution. And honestly, it's the biggest improvement any company can make on a regular, consistent basis for PI planning. It's not the detailed ceremonies and all of that. It's the inputs into it, having that clear vision that keeps being adjusted as we learn more things.
All right. So you've sold me on the idea of a PI plan, but if my company isn't safe already, in the sense of I'm not practicing safe, we don't know anything about safe, we don't have people in our organization that are trained in safe, but I like this idea that you're talking about. I want that outcome. What do I do? How do I get to that? How do I start implementing PI planning?
It's really the same answer. The question that we talked about earlier is, do we need SAFE? Do we need PI planning? I'm an advocate of SAFE. I've been working with it for over 10 years. I think it's a great framework. Is it the only way to achieve what we're talking about? No, it's not. It's become a very preferred and very viable industry accepted industry standard approach, but it's not the only way. But the key thing that has to be there every time is what we just talked about, is having that overall vision and direction and backing away. You and I talked earlier about Taylorism in a previous podcast about how Taylorism has led to that command and control structure, the work breakdown. And we've come to believe that that's the way we should work. It's wrong. Not in the complex environment we live in today. We have to focus on what are the outcomes we're looking for? What are the goals? What are the key things we're trying to accomplish? We're starting up a new partnership with Scaled Agile right now. And our discussions aren't about the detailed things, nuances, and so forth. The discussions are about who do we want to be? How do we want people to refer to us? What problems do we want to help our clients and customers solve? That's where we need to focus on. And then we incorporate the process that will help us get there. Now, SAFE using PI planning is a great way to turn that vision and goal into actionable directions and specific objectives and specific things that the teams take on. Again, talking about the work at the team level, not at the leadership level. It's a great way to do it. There are other ways to do it. And so you asked, What if I'm not doing PI planning? Well, first, I would consider it. It's a great way it's such a tried and true way of getting to that actionable plan to meet the goals and objectives that we're now focusing on. But there are other ways to do it. You can start working with the teams, even if you're on a team by team basis, backing away from the work direction and focusing instead on what are we trying to accomplish. Let the people doing the work figure out how to do it. A lot of people confuse when they talk about Scrum, and Scrum talks about self-organizing teams. That doesn't mean we throw a bunch of people in a room and say, you guys figure out what teams you're on. No, we think about and analytically create and plan the teams to create the best flow. But self-organizing means the teams self-organize around how to solve the problem. What is it we need to take on and do to solve this problem the best way we can? Now, instead of one or two people thinking of it from a leadership level, you've got 8 or 10 people thinking about it. And these 8 or 10 people are people that work in the systems, that face it every day, deal with it all the time. That's where innovation comes from. Peter Drucker said it well. He said, innovation comes from the producer. Maybe that was Deming, but innovation comes from the producer, the people building out. That's where the innovation comes from. We want leadership to step back and figure out what's the direction. Vision and direction comes from leadership, not work breakdown structure, not Gantt charts and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So if I come from a world of Gantt charts, work breakdown structures, and sort of a more traditional project or business, sort of MBA business mindset or, finance background, and I think of things in this step approach, but I want to move to this more lean, agile way of working. I want to implement PI planning. What kind of, in the spirit of outcomes, what kind of tangible, measurable outcomes should I be reasonably expecting from implementing PI planning? Like, am I going to, as soon as I start introducing this formula into my special sauce, am I going to see a X number of improvement in productivity and output and this and that? Or is it something else?
It's the key ingredient, the key outcome you're going to gain from PI planning is back to that old faithful improving flow of value. Now, there's a number of other things, ancillary benefits you get from it, such as improved productivity, better quality, a number of things. But the real bottom line is flow value. And it comes in where, as leadership is stating the direction, the vision, they've been talking to customers, they've been listening to customers. Rather than spending their time writing detailed requirements, they're spending their time talking to customers, doing Gemba walks, going to learn what is going to help us. And these are both internal and external customers. But they're learning about what is the problem space, what is the problem domain, what are potential opportunities to improve our footprint with the client, our satisfaction with the client, and so on. And they're bringing those back as problem statements, opportunity statements to the teams. Then as the teams take those opportunity statements, we call them features in Scaled Agile, they're taking those opportunity statements, those features, and saying, wow, that's a really important problem to solve. Here's some ideas that we have to do that. And the result is huge increased efficiency. Again, flow of value is the focus. But now, because the teams are looking at how to solve the problem, they have the detailed understanding of how the systems currently work, what's easy, what's not, what's quick, how can we learn quickly if this is the right approach, that is the right approach. They're best placed to see what the different opportunities are. In SAFE, we talk about set-based design, having multiple design potentials or approaches, and not eliminating one until we see the data comes back, and that helps us reinforce the others. And so it's a greatly increased efficiency because we spend less time and effort solving the right problem. And then you get feedback loops, because coming into PI planning, we're not only bringing in the vision and the direction from leadership, product management, and so forth, we're also bringing in customer feedback, stakeholder feedback, internal, external customer feedback. And that feedback is helping us reflect, wow, you're solving the right problem, boy, the stuff we did the last PI, that last time box, customers weren't really crazy with the implementation of it. Yeah, that was kind of an MVP. So now we know we're on the right direction. We have a rudimentary solution in place. Now we need to make it easier to use. The teams know the clear direction. They know exactly what needs to be done. So rather than having these requirements that we try and predict the future that are extremely expensive to build, and I know when I was in software engineering, I look back on it, we had something called a TDS, a technical design specification. And as I mentioned in an earlier podcast, I was fortunate to work with some companies that are very progressive thinking. That was one thing they still had. And when I joined them, I went along with it for a bit. I wrote first TDS, started to work with my team to build it out. And about 4 hours into the effort, half of the TDS was invalidated. Well, that's not going to work. Well, we based all of this on that. Scratch. We did not do TDSs anymore. We did learning on the fly. We said, okay, what is the objective? Well, we want to make this more efficient for the customer. We were in supply chain and we were trying to figure out how do we make that effort, that physical effort, more efficient, and how do we improve the accuracy of the data coming back? Okay, that's the problem to solve. How can we do that? Wow, there's a number of different ways we could do that. So now we had set-based design. And we would start to pursue some of those. Rather than picking a point and saying, go this direction, we would pick multiple options and say, well, let's go look at these. Let's do some analytics. Let's do even some MVP approaches, some quick little prototypes. In a day or two, couple days, we start to learn, this one, no good, but these two look really good. Let's keep going on those. So that's another effectiveness of PI planning, is it allows the teams to look at the opportunity rather than a list of tasks to do. Look at the opportunity and say, there's several different options. Okay, how can we quickly eliminate the non-value add, the not as successful approaches, truncate those, and determine what the right solution is so that we can start building that out. Part of that happens in PI planning. The teams are doing quick brainstorming, coming up with these potential set-based designs and so forth, and they're scribbling them on sticky notes. It's not detailed. It's not full detailed plans. I have seen the most successful PI planning events where they come out of it with the equivalent of the cocktail napkin. They've got a flip chart and they've been scribbling on this and they crossed a couple and they go, oh, these two options look really good. Okay, how are we going to learn quickly which is the right approach? So I strongly advocate, and I always talk about PI planning is discovery. It's not a readout. It's not a allocation of work. It's none of those things. It is a discovery of, based on all of those great opportunities leadership brought to us, product management brought to us, of all these problems we can solve for our customer. How can we deliver on those? How can we deliver on those outcomes? How can we make that happen? That's why it's a discovery session.
So we know that this PI planning process, it's going to be that first thing that I do at the beginning of the year, get our company, our organization out on the right step. It's gonna promote this culture change that's probably going to happen within my organization, my company. We're going to start working towards this continuous development, improvement mindset and culture, one around experimentation, evolution. But if I'm not there now, and I know that this is a change management process, what kind of help am I going to need, knowing that I have no experience in this at this point, if I want my organization to get towards this lean, agile mindset, to be able to implement PI planning? What help? Who do I need to be able to get me on that track, on that path, moving, with purpose and speed, to be able to get that organizational transformation result at the end of the day?
Yeah, great question. But I want to reference something you said that's very powerful: the lean agile mindset. There are too many companies that look at SAFe and they think that's the target. But just like the work to do, SAFe is a means to an end. And the end goal is that we have incorporated brought into our culture the lean agile mindset. We've gone from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset where we're constantly learning, constantly wanting to shift processes and approaches and continually evolving the culture and things like that. SAFe is a vehicle. It's a means to an end. It's not the end state. And so that's the first thing to understand. SAFe is a means to an end. It's not the end state you're trying to achieve. It's just like the New Year's resolution for I want to get fit. No, that's a means to an end. That's something to do to achieve what your dreams, your desires, whatever. And for a company to look at SAFe, that's the right way to view it. Now, how do you get started? The first thing is education. One thing I learned very strongly from Dean that has just stuck with Dean Leffingwell, one of the creators of the framework, is we as SPCT, SAFe Program Consultant Trainers, we are not selling SAFe and never should. We are selling knowledge. We want to give people the knowledge, the information so that they can make the right decision. Back to what I talked about earlier with the New Year's resolutions. If you don't have a firm grasp of what you're trying to achieve and what the outcome is you're looking for, implementing SAFe is really hard to do. That's the reality. Now, the other reality is not implementing SAFe is probably an even harder thing to do, but you're still doing it. But it is a hard thing to do. So having that clear goal and objective of what we're trying to accomplish through implementing SAFe, that's critical. I always coach leadership. Make sure you know the end state. I put up vision statements and things like that and get them to paint a very vivid picture of a future state of this company, what it looks like and so forth. All right, now let's use SAFe to get us there. But some of the specific steps, knowledge and education, absolutely. I strongly recommend not to advocate for services or anything, but get some help, preferably external help. Get someone to hold up the mirror. You had mentioned earlier some companies maybe that have been doing PI planning for 2 or 3 PIs, maybe 2 or 3 years. It's really easy to fall into that rut, to fall into that, but that's the way we do it. And that's the most expensive words in business because that's the way we've always done it.
Yes.
I like to refer back to, we've talked about that Taiichi Ono quote, if you're not changing the process daily, you're missing the mark. That's a paraphrase. But he basically said, if you're not changing your process manual every 2 weeks, you're missing something. You should be continuously improving it. And so companies that are looking at an opportunity that have already implemented SAFe, never fall into a rut. Get someone to hold up that mirror for you to be able to reflect and say, that's what we look like. That's not really going to get us where we want to go, is it? No, it's probably not. Okay. So then you pick what's the key thing you want to fix. So back to our health. If you want to improve your health, we have a lot of options: fitness, nutrition, better sleep. Maybe it's relaxation, meditation, yoga, whatever. There's a lot of different things you can do. What do you think? And in business and SAFe, we can use analytics to determine that we use metrics and measurements, the measure and grow approach. We can get more fine-tuned on that rather than guesswork. But we pick out the thing that we say, what is the one thing that we can do now, that we think will help us advance? Not 10 things, not 20 things, the one thing. We focus on that, apply Kaizen, relentless improvement. We improve on that. And then we look back, hold up the mirror again and say, is it getting better? Wow, is it ever getting better? Is that still our biggest issue? No, it's not our biggest issue anymore. Okay, what's the next biggest issue? Let's go to that one. Common ones I see from companies that have implemented SAFe is, you brought up the topic, PI planning. They're really struggling with PI planning. And I don't want to say that they're doing it wrong. They're missing value. They're missing opportunities and benefits. So it's not that they're doing it incorrectly. It's they're not doing it as well as they could be in their current state. So improve PI planning. Look honestly at the facets of PI planning. Again, not so much about the detailed ceremonies. Yes, there's improvements to be made there, but generally overall, it's the outcomes from each part of the agenda, if you will. What are we hoping to get out of team breakouts? Oh, we want draft plans and final plans from teams to hear back from them how they think they can accomplish this. Okay. What do we want from the presentations? We want to get on the same page, transparency and alignment. We want to have those good conflict conversations. What do we want out of our inspect and adapt, or our management problem solving workshop after the day one? Well, we want to create adjustments. We heard from the teams. We learned a lot today. What adjustments do we want to introduce into the system for tomorrow? Look at each one of those components of PI planning and determine which of those, by improving that one, will help us the most. Focus on that. I am not an advocate of trying to fix everything at once. Usually that's a mistake. There might be some glaring things where you say, oh, we've got to do 2 or 3s all at once because we're really off target on these 3 things. Okay, but you're still trying to accomplish the same outcome. But try to focus, limit your whip on improvement as well as development efforts.
So it sounds like, I mean, we started this off with, getting off on the right foot with PI planning. But it's funny because that question even comes from this mindset, which is where I think many of us who are not in the lean agile mindset industry, knowledgeable about it, we come from a prescriptive background. We look for checklists, how to, and so on. For example, with fitness, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by starting this exercise regime. Do these exercises. I'm going to start a new diet. I'm going to try and sleep better. But for example, in the case of fitness, unless I change my mindset, the way I think about exercise, how I enjoy or not enjoy it, which may be the reason why you're not doing it, if I just am prescriptive, my willpower will fade at one point and I will stop doing it. And that's why so many people stop their New Year's resolutions and fail in that. So in the same context of our corporate culture, instead of introducing a key ingredient, a special process, a magic fix for what's ailing us, we need to, as a first step, engage in the PI planning process to help set the stage for this transformation, this organizational change management process that takes us from this prescriptive, step-by-step, complicated but sequential process of trying to get to improvement, and rather transform that into a state where we are not necessarily thinking of a step-by-step checklist mentality, but a mindset, a way of thinking, a way of being culturally within our organization that promotes continuous improvement, continuous development, and allows us the perspective and the ability to see ourselves for how we are, engage in the habits, practices, and activities that will bring us the results and the outcomes that we want. And in sort of to answer that last question, what kind of help will we need? A combination of that education, the outside advice, whether that's consultants or trainers or somebody to, as you said, hold up that mirror to say, if you're in it, it's challenging to be able to take a step back and see the reality of what it's like, but to have somebody else stand back and say, this is what you look like. This is what the reality is. This is how things are improving or not improving, as the case may be. You need that outside reference point so that you can start the process at the beginning of 2023 to work towards and stay on track with that performance, that improvement, and that better result.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about a topic for a future podcast is creative tension, because the reality is to PI planning, implementing safe, lean agile in general, there is no real secret sauce. But the closest thing we have is something that Peter Senge called creative tension, is building energy, excitement, enthusiasm about improvement opportunities. You talked about exercise. Okay, maybe I don't want to get on the elliptical for 60 minutes today. But man, yesterday I went 55 minutes and I was beat. Today I went 60 and I had more energy. I'm seeing some outcomes. I'm seeing some value from this. It gets exciting. It gets engaging. And that's where creative tension kicks in, is you pick up these problems and not putting them in that negative viewpoint. You look at them as opportunities to solve. And when you look in that mirror, that's a critical skill to develop. Look in the mirror with a critical assessment, analytical approach, but always be happy about what you see. If you see an opportunity to improve, yay, now we can get better.